You're sitting in a cafe in East Berlin. A vintage 1960s ceramic cafe coffee cup in front of you. A vintage 1960s German language newspaper in your hand. You look completely calm. But under the table, your left knee won't stop shaking. Because the man sitting across from you thinks you're his most trusted spy inside the CIA. And the man who recruited you 6 months ago in Washington thinks you're his most valuable asset inside the KGB. Both of them are right. And both of them would have you killed without a second thought if they ever found out the truth. Welcome to the most dangerous job in the world. You're a double agent. And today, something has gone very, very wrong. Let's go back to the beginning. You were born in 1931 in a small town in West Germany. Your father was a school teacher. Your mother made bread every Sunday morning. It smelled like caraway seeds and butter. Normal life, simple life. Then the war came and took everything. By the time you were 14, your father was dead on the Eastern Front. Your town was rubble. And you had learned one very important lesson that most people never learn until it's too late. Loyalty is a transaction. Everyone is loyal to something. The question is, what? You were smart. Exceptionally smart. You learned English from American soldiers who occupied your town after the war. You learned Russian from books you found in bombed-out buildings. Languages came to you, like music comes to some people, naturally, effortlessly, completely. By 1950, you were working as a low-level translator for the American occupation forces. By 1954, you had been quietly recruited by the CIA. Not dramatically. No one put a gun to your head. A man in a brown suit sat next to you at a bar in Frankfurt and said very simply, "We've been watching you for 2 years. You're wasted here. Come work for us." And just like that, your real life began. The CIA didn't train you in America. Too risky. Too obvious. They trained you in a farmhouse outside Munich. 6 months. Intense. Brutal. Methodical. You learned how to follow someone through a crowded city without being seen. You learned how to lose a tail in under 4 minutes. You learned how to build a cover identity so deep and so detailed that even you would sometimes forget it wasn't real. You learned how to lie, not just with your words, with your body, with your breathing, with your eyes. Your handler's name was Richard. He never told you his last name. He was 50 years old, always wore the same gray tie, and had the coldest eyes you had ever seen on a human being. On your last day of training, he said something to you that you never forgot. In this business, there are 2 kinds of people: those who trust and those who survive. Choose wisely. You chose to survive. Your mission was straightforward on paper. Infiltrate East Berlin. Build relationships with Soviet intelligence officers. Feed low-level information back to the CIA. Identify KGB operations targeting American assets in Europe. Simple, clean, dangerous. Here is where the story gets complicated. 18 months into your mission, something unexpected happened. The KGB found you. Not because you made a mistake, because someone in the CIA made one. A name was leaked. Not yours exactly, but close enough. A description. A location. A pattern of behavior. One evening, a man sat down next to you at a chess table in a park in East Berlin. He was heavyset, Russian, and had the particular stillness of someone who had done very violent things and felt completely at peace with that fact. He said in perfect German, "We know what you are. We know who sent you. You have two choices, work for us or disappear." Most people in that moment would panic. You didn't. Because Richard had trained you for exactly this moment. In fact, and here's the part that changes everything, Richard had predicted this might happen. And he had told you precisely what to do if it did. Except, become a double agent, feed the KGB just enough real information to earn their trust, but control what they know, shape what they believe, and report everything, every KGB operation, every Soviet asset, every piece of intelligence they share with you, straight back to the CIA. It was the most dangerous game imaginable. And you said yes. Your KGB handler's name was Alexei Volkov. He was nothing like Richard. Where Richard was cold and distant, Alexei was warm, almost fatherly. He had a loud laugh and terrible taste in jokes. He brought you chocolates from Moscow sometimes. Real Russian chocolate, dark and slightly bitter. You liked him. That was the most dangerous part, because liking someone makes it harder to betray them. And betraying Alexei was literally your job. Your days fell into a precise and exhausting rhythm. Every Tuesday, you met with Alexei at a safe house in East Berlin. You gave him carefully selected information, true enough to be credible, harmless enough to protect American operations. You watched his face carefully as he read each report. You learned his tells, the slight tightening around his eyes when something surprised him, the way he tapped his finger twice on the table when he was skeptical. Every Thursday, you crossed back into West Berlin through a checkpoint where a CIA contact worked as a border guard. You passed your real report, everything Alexei had told you, every KGB operation you had learned about, every Soviet asset you had identified, through the most mundane method imaginable. A folded newspaper left on a specific bench. Old-fashioned, reliable, almost impossible to detect. For 2 years, this worked perfectly. You became one of the CIA's most valuable assets in Europe. 3 KGB operations were shut down because of your intelligence. 2 Soviet moles inside NATO were quietly removed. The information you provided was described by Richard as, and these are his exact words, worth more than an entire division of soldiers. You felt something you hadn't expected to feel. Pride. But here's what they don't tell you about living a double life. It doesn't just exhaust your body, it hollows out your soul. You start forgetting which version of yourself is real. You have 2 names, 2 identities, 2 sets of loyalties, 2 men who trust you completely. And you are actively, deliberately destroying that trust every single day. You stop sleeping properly, not because of fear. You've made your peace with fear. But because the moment your mind goes quiet, the questions start. Who are you actually loyal to? You were born German. You work for Americans. You pretend to work for Russians. Your father died fighting a war started by Germans. The Americans rebuilt your country. The Russians divided it. None of this is simple. None of this is clean. And then one evening, Alexei does something that makes everything infinitely more complicated. He shows you a photograph. It's a picture of a family. A man, a woman, 3 children, standing in front of a house somewhere in Ohio. This man, Alexei says quietly, has been passing our military communications to the Americans for 4 years. We identified him last month. We are going to make sure he never does it again. He says it so casually. So matter-of-factly, you look at the photograph. The children are young. The youngest can't be more than 4 years old. And you understand in that moment exactly what "make sure he never does it again" means. You have 48 hours to get a warning to the CIA, or that man dies, and his family loses everything. You break protocol. You know you shouldn't. Richard drilled it into you 100 times. Never break protocol, never act emotionally. The mission is everything. But you can't let that family be destroyed. Instead of waiting until Thursday, you try to make contact on a Wednesday. You leave a signal, a chalk mark on a specific wall near the checkpoint. That means emergency contact needed immediately. And someone sees you do it. Not a KGB officer. Worse, a KGB informant. An ordinary East Berlin citizen who reports suspicious behavior to the Soviet authorities for extra food rations. A sad, desperate, very ordinary kind of betrayal. By Thursday morning, Alexei knows something is wrong. He doesn't confront you directly. That's not how he operates. Instead, he changes your meeting location at the last minute. He sends you to an address you've never been to before, a basement apartment in a part of East Berlin you don't know well. You almost don't go. Every instinct you have screams at you to run. To cross into West Berlin right now, to disappear into the system the CIA has set up for exactly this kind of emergency. But if you run, Alexei knows for certain you've been playing him. The operation collapses. Every asset you've protected is potentially exposed. And that family in Ohio is still in danger. So you go. The basement is cold and smells like damp concrete. Alexei is already there. He's not alone. 2 men stand behind him. Large men. Quiet men. He doesn't offer you chocolate this time. For a long moment, he just looks at you. And you realize something that sends a cold wave through your entire body. He already knows. Not everything, but enough. "I want to ask you something," he says finally. "And I want you to think very carefully before you answer." "Of course," you say. Your voice is completely steady. You're amazed by that. "The information you gave me last month about the American listening station in Frankfurt. We sent a team to investigate. The station had been moved 2 weeks before our team arrived, almost as if someone had warned them." Who warned them? This is the moment. Every piece of training you ever received narrows down to this single point in time. You look Alexei directly in the eyes. You let a look of genuine offense cross your face. You lean forward slightly. "You think it was me?" "I think," Alexei says carefully, "that someone warned them, and I think you are the only person who knew the timing of our operation." Or, you say slowly, you have another leak. Somewhere closer to Moscow than you'd like to admit. Silence. You watch his face. The finger taps twice on your knee. He's not certain. You've planted doubt. But doubt isn't safety. Doubt just means he won't kill you tonight. You leave the meeting alive, but you know it's over. You have maybe 24 hours before Alexei makes up his mind. Before those 2 quiet men come to wherever you're sleeping and end the most complicated chapter of your life permanently, you walk calmly to the checkpoint. You hand over your papers. The CIA border guard is not there tonight. It's his day off. And for one terrible moment, You think this is where it ends. Then the guard on duty stamps your papers and waves you through. Just like that. Ordinary, mundane. You walk into West Berlin. You don't run. Running attracts attention. You walk. You find a payphone. You dial a number you've memorized but never used. It rings twice. Richard answers. I need extraction, you say. Tonight. A pause. The Ohio family, you say. Did they get out? Another pause. Longer this time. They got out, Richard says quietly. 2 days ago. You lean your forehead against the cold glass of the payphone booth. And for the first time in 4 years, you let yourself breathe. You were extracted to West Germany that night, then to London, then eventually to a quiet house in rural Virginia where you spent 3 months being debriefed by people who wrote everything you said in notebooks and never told you what they did with the information. Alexei Volkov was recalled to Moscow 6 months later. You never found out exactly what happened to him. You told yourself it didn't matter. You still think about the photograph sometimes. The family in Ohio. The youngest child who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. You broke protocol for them. Richard never forgave you for that. He said you risked the entire operation for one family. Maybe he was right. But here is what you learned. Living 2 lives in the most dangerous city in the world during the most dangerous decade of the 20th century. Loyalty is a transaction. Everyone told you that. But some transactions are worth more than others, and some people, even people you will never meet, are worth breaking the rules for. That's your life as a Cold War double agent. If you survived, you were lucky. If you stayed human while doing it, you were something rarer than that.